Dr. Jeffrey Long is an American radiation oncologist and author. In 1998, he founded the Near-Death Experience Research Foundation. His book, Evidence of the Afterlife, The Science of Near-Death Experiences, published in 2010, became a New York Times bestseller. Today, we welcome Dr. Jeffrey Long as he shares with us his journey and research.
It was decades ago. I was in the medical library looking up an article related to cancer. As I was flipping through the journal, I saw in a title the term near-death experience, and I was immediately fascinated because nothing in my medical background had led me to ever hear that term. This was a cardiologist, a heart doctor, who had written an article about patients that had near-death experience. And how can you not be fascinated by wondering what happens when you die? And then several years later, I heard my first in-person near-death experience. So I immediately became convinced to try to study near-death experience with the best methodology possible to answer a question I had in my mind, that burning question, are near-death experiences real? Well, now that I've received over 4,000 of them in my investigative journey, the answer is unequivocally, in a word, yes, near-death experiences are real.
Dr. Long's 2016 book, God and the Afterlife, the groundbreaking new evidence for God and near-death experience, focuses on the connection between near-death experiences and encounters with God.
As I started pouring in through hundreds and then ultimately thousands of near-death experiences on my website, I was amazed at how common concepts of God would appear. Now, God is a human word, and over people would say, God as a human word is limiting. The God I encountered in my near-death experience was far beyond any earthly description or any earthly language possible. And so very intrigued by that, by the remarkable consistency. In the most recent version of my research survey, I asked very directly, during your near-death experience, did you receive any information that there exists a God or supreme being? And to my amazement, nearly half of the respondents, and we're talking 834, answered yes. And so with the narrative response that followed, I learned a huge amount about that amazing, overwhelmingly loving, compassionate being entity called God, which is the best word in the English language that near-death experiencers encountered or became aware of so commonly.
The Near-Death Experience Research Foundation is the largest NDE website in the world, having collected 5,300 cases worldwide.
The inspiration was down to a basic scientific principle, and that is the larger the sample size, the more people you survey, the more confident you are in the results of that study. It's not only just dramatic and inspirational what I'm finding, but it's nailed down, it is validated by the best scientific methods and huge survey results, which make me more confident than ever that we're really exactly finding and able to describe at some level what near-death experiencers encounter when they encounter God and a variety of other things.
We asked Dr. Long, do diverse backgrounds and religious traditions influence near-death experiences?
My wife, Jody, who's full-time webmaster for my Near-Death Experience Research Foundation, she single-handedly worked with volunteer translators from all around the world to have portions of the website, including its survey, translated into over 30 different languages. So amazingly, we can get near-death experiences shared in the native language literally worldwide. And many of these near-death experiences are from non-Western countries. So we've been able to do by far the largest cross-cultural study of near-death experience that's ever been reported. Everywhere in the world, whatever the language people have, The content, what happens during the near-death experience, is strikingly similar. And that's based on not only my analysis of scores of non-Western near-death experiences that we've received in our research, but I actually corroborated with a near-death experience researcher in Iran, and he had a couple dozen near-death experiences, Muslims, and again, content of the near-death experience absolutely strikingly similar to typical Western near-death experiences. So yeah, amazingly, it doesn't make any difference where on the planet you are when you have a near-death experience. Makes no difference whether you're, say, a Muslim in Egypt or a Hindu in India or a Christian in the United States or anybody anywhere that doesn't even have a religious belief. Wherever on the world you have a near-death experience, the content, what occurs in the near-death experience, is going to be strikingly similar. And that's exciting. That really shows that the near-death experience is like a core experience that really is a part of the potential experience of literally any person on the planet.
Dr. Long recalls some accounts of near-death experiences involving heaven and hell.
Now, when heaven is described in near-death experiences, it's very, very different from the three-dimensional physical earth that we know. And it really took me a long time to really have that deeply sink in. So what people overwhelmingly consistently describe in near-death experiences of heaven is a realm that is literally not physical. In other words, in this non-material realm, time is either radically different or often described as doesn't exist at all. Communication is the best word in the English language is telepathic, but it's more than that. It's an instantaneous communication of ideas, concepts, all the basically concepts around it, crystal clear communication, no potential for ambiguity or misunderstanding. Movement is non-physical in this realm. In heaven realms described in near-death experiences, there can be buildings, but typically beautiful beyond anything on earth. There can be colors that are often described as so beautiful in heaven that they couldn't possibly exist in earth. Music has been described. Again, music far more beautiful than is possible on earth. In these non-earthly or heavenly realms, they typically at this time feel overwhelming sense of peace and love, and often describe this heavenly realm as feeling like their real home. They may encounter deceased loved ones. These are joyous reunions. Even deceased beloved pets may be encountered in this realm. So it's beautiful beyond, literally beyond language, what they're describing with heaven. And absolutely a wonderful place, far more amazing, beautiful, wonderful than anything that's literally possible anywhere on the planet. Very uncommonly, there are hellish experiences. Now, that can involve the demonic or a sense of fear by the person having the near-death experience. There can be frightening sounds. What they see can be frightening. I want to, number one, emphasize that these are extremely uncommon. A far more common experience that people have when they nearly die is due to something other than a near-death experience. A common confounder is what's called intensive care unit delirium. These are where people are critically ill, and it's a hallucinatory experience. So it's very, very difficult to study this. In fact, some major researchers think there aren't any of these hellish near-death experiences at all. Now, I do think they exist, but I want to emphasize as we talk about hellish near-death experiences that very commonly described, even for beings in that realm, there seems to be a sense that if they ask for forgiveness, if they want to, with sincerity, leave that realm, they seem to have the ability. There's forgiveness seems to be literally off the scale in that heavenly realm. Also, these hellish realms in near-death experiences are segregated. There seems to be a very separate, if you will, enclosed environment where hell is. It's completely separate from the surrounding hellish realm. In other words, these demonic evil beings cannot affect other people in heaven because they're confined in that place, and that's important too. So I think another important thing to consider for a hellish realm is that that's literally the best evidence that even in the afterlife, even in heaven, there's free will. Free will so universal, so great that beings can choose to, rather than be in heaven, be among other malevolent evil beings like themselves confined to hell. So again, properly understood, hellish realm suggests the reality of free will, even to that extent, even in the afterlife. Understand that when God is encountered, you're essentially always in a near-death experience in that unearthly realm. It's not a physical, material realm like we're familiar with on Earth. So not surprisingly, there are some similarities and some differences in how God appears. By far the most common appearance of God that's described is light. Not a light like we know on Earth, but a beautiful light that almost seems to have personality, substance. And probably the other most common descriptor about God is that overwhelming sense of love. It's love that is typically described as something they couldn't know on Earth. It's far beyond love, again, that's even possible on Earth. I mean, it's absolutely amazing as near-death experiencers describe over and over. I was loved completely, through and through, entirely, for my faults. For everything that I am, God loved me. So we see that overwhelmingly. There's often a sense of God's overwhelming ability to create, overwhelming knowledge, seemingly knowledge far beyond anything that could be possible on Earth, literally a universal knowledge. So these are some of the more common descriptors of God, although, again, since God is in a non-material, heavenly realm, God can appear in a variety of different ways, probably for what's best for each particular near-death experiencer. But those are the very common things that are described about God.
Dr. Long tells us how he has observed individuals who have had near-death experiences undergo personal transformations in their lives.
To summarize it succinctly, people change, and often dramatically, but the change may take years. Some of the more common of what we call in the scholarly literature after effects, changes after the near-death experience, include, well, obviously an increased belief in an afterlife. No surprise from the person having a near-death experience, they know what lies beyond death's door. It's a beautiful, wonderful afterlife, nothing to fear. And so, of course, a decreased fear of death, again, no surprise. They may be afraid of the dying process, but they know, again, there's an afterlife, a wonderful afterlife that is for all of us. Near-death experiencers change in a way that they become less materialistic. Very noticeably, they become much more loving. We asked a direct survey question about the degree of compassion that they had prior to their near-death experience and at the time they shared it with us, an average of about 15 years later. And there's almost a threefold increase in the survey response of them saying they become greatly compassionate, greatly loving, and these changes continue often for decades. So while it may take a little bit of time to fully integrate that experience, when it's fully integrated, they can be changed substantially, far more loving, far more, in a very real way, spiritually beautiful people.
Dr. Long's research examines how people approach life, death, spirituality, and their understanding of God.
Certainly people having near-death experiences, by their own personal experience, they get it. They understand that there's an afterlife, half or more understand that there's a bigger picture, that God, something that's, if you will, a part of order and love and sort of puts it all together in the afterlife in a very positive way. But people that read about near-death experiences and understand them, and certainly me as a researcher of near-death experiences, it can change people that are aware of near-death experiences dramatically. It's changed me. It's changed my wife, who's worked very, very hard at studying near-death experiences along with me. So you tend to, if you really understand near-death experiences, incorporate those values that near-death experiencers have as they go on living their life. When you read about over and over about that love, that compassion, the significance, the meaning of our earthly life, it's extremely important. We're here for a reason, even though life can be difficult. Ultimately, the other values that near-death experiencers commonly describe is that unity, that oneness of all. It's a very common awareness people having a near-death experience have in heaven. They feel that connection, that unity, what they often describe as a oneness. And maybe that's not so surprising. Love seems to be the dominant force in the universe, and a dictionary definition of love right off the bat is a connection. Well, this seems to be a manifestation of love in heaven that is, again, far beyond anything we could know or be aware of in earth. We are all one, we are all connected, we are all one, unified in heaven, again, in a very beautiful and wonderful way.
As death is an inevitable destiny for all of us and a source of fear for many, we enjoyed hearing Dr. Long's viewpoints on the subject.
I'm a physician, a radiation oncology doctor. I've helped many, many people with cancer throughout my 37 years of medical practice. So yes, I've been with people as they approach the end of their life. Some people ultimately will succumb from their disease. And yet, what we have with near-death experience, often not only just the patient can be inspired by near-death experiences and realize that even when their earthly life ends, it's literally only the beginning of a life far, far better than what they could have imagined in their earthly life. And that's profoundly reassuring for the friends, family, the loved ones of the people that are ultimately going to die of cancer. Again, understanding near-death experience, the reality of an afterlife, the reality that we're overwhelmingly loved by God, that we're all going to be together again in that heaven, in a beautiful, wonderful place, is absolutely inspirational, absolutely helps people to adapt to end-of-life concerns. And it's a profoundly beautiful message that I've literally had the honor to share over my years of doing this, over 25 years of studying near-death experience. It's been an honor and a privilege to share that very important message with literally tens of millions of people. And in fact, near-death experience and its very consistent message about an afterlife and about God is, in my opinion, the most profoundly positive message that is even conceivable for all of humanity.
Dr. Long has a wish for humanity.
I would wish that humanity could come to understand what people that have near-death experiences do, to really grasp that profound spiritual awareness that our earthly life is profoundly meaningful and significant, that love rules the universe, that love and how we treat each other with the compassion that we treat each other here on earth is far more important than you might possibly imagine. Even small acts of love can ripple through other people's lives in a way that are just amazing. And certainly to have that awareness, that deep knowledge, that knowing that at the end of our life, at the end of our loved one's life, life goes on, a conscious existence far greater, far better than anything we've ever experienced. Again, a profoundly positive message of hope and inspiration for all of us. If anybody wants to read for themselves near-death experiences, just go to my website, nderf.org. That's the Near-Death Experience Research Foundation. Over 4,000 near-death experiences posted in over 30 different languages. All you have to do is start reading them, and you can quickly realize the depth of the amazing everything that I've said here, and far more will be available there. In fact, if you go to that website and go up to experiences and drop down the drop-down tab to exceptional experiences, I'm pretty sure if you literally read just 10 of the exceptional near-death experiences, it would have the potential to change your life in a very positive way, to understand near-death experiences from your own personal journey of exploring and reading what people have shared.
our sincere thanks to Dr. Jeffrey Long and the many people who have shared their near-death experiences to bring positive awareness of eternal God and the afterlife. For more information on God and the afterlife, please visit nderf.org.
If you say that God resides in all, why do you kill a hen? Sri Guru Granth Sahib Ji, Sikhism.
Blessed viewers, thank you for joining us today.